Hi everyone, Sebastien Richard here for another top nugget. And these days I've been delving deep into a very simple verse, the verse that talks in Matthew, where Jesus talks to the disciples. And he's telling them, you are the salt of the earth. And I'm going to read to you the verse. I've been digging into that and enjoying it quite a bit. So Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. And it got me thinking about the value of salt. First of all, in the imagery that Jesus gives us, but also back in the day. Something that we don't really know today because we kind of take salt for granted. It's fairly easy to come by, maybe not as easy as it used to. I mean, we do have the coronavirus problems where the store shelves are becoming empty. But it used to be something that's very, very easy to get. Go to a grocery store, grab your salt, there you go, you have it. But back in the day, it was more precious than that. It was actually so precious that it was even used as an item to barter. So it was used as a measure of money, if you will. So that's how precious it was. And it's interesting to make that link of salt being precious because Jesus is basically saying to us, the believers, you are precious. You are precious. So that's the first lesson that I think is really, really powerful in when Jesus compares us to salt, the salt of the earth. Another thing that I find extremely insightful and extremely interesting is that Jesus also says that the modern word that we have for salary, our salary, comes from the word salt. So salary comes from salt. No big surprise there in a way because, hey, it makes sense, right? It's a root word for salary is salt. But here's the thing that's very, very interesting. So salt, we know, makes other things more tasty. So we know that. And thus, because it makes food tasty, salt has its use in being spent. When we empty it up on our food, we are spending the salt on the food, and by being spent, the salt is more, it adds the taste that it needs to. And what do we do with a salary? Well, with our salary, we spend it. A salary is not useful unless it is spent. Now, Jesus is comparing us to salt. And we know that salt and salary have the same root word. Now, interestingly enough, in the same way, believers, kingdom expanders, kingdom ambassadors, Christians, we are useful when, just like salt, we are spending ourselves. We are being spent, just like a salary on the earth. So that, I thought, was a very powerful image. So questions, are you being spent for the kingdom? You know, when you have a busy day and you work hard and you reach the end of that day and you're exhausted, that's an expression we say. We say, oh, I'm spent. And that's a good thing. When you're spent for the kingdom of God, when you are used like salt and you're spent for the kingdom of God, that's a very, very good thing. Another interesting nugget concerning the salt is if salt loses its flavor, it is useless. It becomes useless. And how can a believer lose his flavor? Well, a believer can lose his flavor if, for example, a believer is living in fear instead of faith. That's one way we can lose our flavor. Another way we can lose our flavor is when we become self-centered instead of being other people-centric. So when we only look to ourselves, we lose our flavor as well because we are called to love other people, to add value to other people, to bring the light of the gospel of the kingdom to other people. So that's another way we lose our flavor. And we don't want that. We don't want to lose our flavor. So that's one thing. Salt adds flavor. So it adds flavor to food. But salt is also a preservative. Okay? So in the same way, believers are the salt of the earth, and we are serving to preserve the earth. With us moving along and being on the earth, we are, in a way, protecting other people. Wherever you find yourself, because you're there, the favor of God is spread on the group as a result of you being there. So you're preserving other people by your mere presence. And we have a great illustration of that in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, when Paul is on that ship at the end of the book. He's on that ship, and the waves are going to and fro, and they're going to crash. The ship is going to sink to the bottom of the sea. But then Paul gets the message that no, it's not going to happen. Not only is his life going to be preserved, but because he's there, the rest of the crew is going to be preserved. And Paul says it out loud, says, guys, don't worry. This is going to pass, and we're going to be okay. As dramatic as what we're going through right now, we're going to be just fine. So as the salt of the earth, we are serving to preserve the people around us. And in this time of crisis, what a great encouragement we can be to others if we act as a preservative, if we give them hope, if we give them a faith instead of fear. We act as salt, as preservers. So I hope this top nugget has encouraged you to be that salt, to be the salt that Jesus says you are, and to go out and bless someone. Well, go out as much as you possibly can anyway. But be a blessing, be a preserver, add the flavor, and spend yourself for the kingdom of God. Be blessed and thrive on.